Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Cataffo. I run West Coast go-to-market at SecurityPal, and joining us on today's episode of Insecurity is seasoned security leader Ryan Black. And today our topic is training the next generation of security professionals. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. It's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
I love our topic today. Before we get into it, though, I would love to hear your story about how you became a CISO.
Yeah, thanks. I think, Mike, a thing that stands out to me is I didn't start out intending to be one. I have a diverse technical background, wanted to help improve things, wanted to help solve problems, gather a motley crew of different folks that are like-minded and go after something, to chase an initiative. That led to different opportunities to lead teams or asked to lead projects. And throughout time, through different roles, pen testing, security services delivery broadly, a few stints at some startups and operations roles and so forth, on into being able to make a larger impact. And that's really what drove me to say, I'd like us to approach security a little bit differently, find ways to bring everyone up, sort of knights of the round table, I often say. And that led me to some increased opportunities, which I appreciate immensely.
No, I love it. Is there a thing that like a moment in your career or at a particular job where you're like, yeah, I really like this security thing, or like, hey, like this is just the thing that keeps like grabbing my attention?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. I look back on things. I've always been into technology. Growing up, in early career, I did early consulting in my twenties, early twenties, and security was something on the side. Figuring out how to sort of break the alarm clock, tinkering with video games, all that type of thing. Nothing nefarious, but can I take something apart? That led into some reverse engineering and other things like that, for example. But it wasn't a career for me until sort of the midpoint where I had the opportunity to join an organization that was going to grow a security services team. And some previous colleagues of mine said, hey, I think you can come help us build the infrastructure, help with the services. And it's all security stuff. And I said, wait, I can merge these things together. All the technology experience and what I really loved, and sort of what I did on the weekend. And I haven't looked back.
Love it. So our topic today is training the next generation of security professionals. I know this is something you're really passionate about. Take me back to the beginning. Well, I guess first let's like talk about why are you so passionate about this? Like when did this I guess I don't know if there's like a moment or a thing that happened where you're like, oh wow, like this is like a big deal, and I need to put my fingerprints on this.
Yeah, Mike, I think a few things stand out to me. And so early on, when I mentioned some video games and things early as a teenager growing up, having some folks, I actually wish I knew who they were to thank them, but I think they were in college at the time. I was a young teenager, and wanting to figure out how to manipulate video games and some of those types of things, right? Not to really to cheat, but to change the game, do things like that. And they effectively told me I was willing to ask thoughtful questions. They were willing to help me. And so they gave me things to read. This is an IRC back in the day, text chat, things to read, things to come back and ask thoughtful questions. And they spent the time, these people who had plenty else to do, I'm sure, answering my questions. I'm sure they were really basic, but they were saying, go read this, go do that. You're on the right track. And some of that teasing out my own curiosity and making me learn to fish, right? Not just giving me the fish. And that is what sort of inspired me that I can do this and I can learn. There's places to go look, questions to know I don't know to ask yet, and some of those types of things. But that's what kicked things off in my career. And then later on, I mentioned having some colleagues invite me to join a growing team, folks that believed in me and were willing to invest to give me a shot and say, I think you can do this. We trust you. You're going to have to grow and start sprinting, but you can come join us. We're building something really cool. And being in an environment of folks much more senior than I was, willing to teach me, willing to let me run and to trust me to level up quickly and to ask what I need to know and all those sort of things. Really, I appreciate that. They gave me, it was a very fast paced part of my life, part of my career, but it let me grow quickly. And so I guess the opportunity there is really just that, being given opportunities to learn, having someone say, I'm going to teach you, you can totally do this. It's great. I think just that spark.
That's great. It's funny, and I've heard so many stories and interviewed a lot of guests, and like there's always like for everyone, there's always like this like moment or spark or thing that happens, and or somebody typically is involved in it as well. There's always like a human component of this, and then where that leads is just pretty phenomenal. What was the first group? You mentioned this first group of folks who were like really helpful and like sort of reverse engineering video games and stuff like that. Like, were these like friends of yours, or did you meet them in a forum, or like, how did you even discover these folks?
Yeah, yeah. So they became friends. We were in IRC, and it's basically a shared interest group. And lots of folks would say, Help me accomplish this thing. I want to know how to hack this, or unlock that, or do this sort of thing." And while I had an interest in that outcome, I also wanted to know, how did other people do it? And so, how did you build this? How did you make a trainer to give yourself infinite money in The Sims, that old game, right? How did you do these things? I said, well, there's a you've got to figure out how that's in the, oh, it's in memory. Okay. And that led to those conversations, and they became friends. They said, well, you can do this. Here, let me read these things. And so they took to conversations, and naturally they were very interested and passionate of these things too. So when you find about those things you do enjoy yourself, you like to share them. And so that really started the conversations. And I wished I had found a way to get back in touch with them. I mentioned earlier, I'd want to say, let me, you know, buy you a coffee or a beer or something, because I do owe a lot of my career to people who gave me a chance to learn.
Yeah, I bet there's a way to track folks down. I feel
Yeah,
like,
look for the right handles.
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I bet you could figure that out. Because I think you've like, it seems like you pretty early on, at least maybe consciously or unconsciously, piece together a framework of like, okay, here's how I get from point A to point B. In terms of like, you were trying to do something, you were stuck or didn't know where to go, and it always seemed like you were able to kind of like figure it out either through asking questions or like finding people who would help you. Is there any like, I guess, is there any like, how did you even come up with like that? I feel like for a lot of folks who are trying to get into something or learn about something, oftentimes that's the hardest part, is just like,
that's
how do
true.
I get from point A to point B? The point in between point A and point B, there's a lot of obstacles or dead ends. So how did you figure that out?
I would credit some of those folks for telling me, ask thoughtful questions, read this first. These are the tools I use. This is the terminology. This is the sort of shop talk. Go look into this, then ask me questions about what you don't understand. So encouraging me to again, not ask for, help me accomplish this goal, this end goal. How do you get there? Go read this, download this, play with that, look at this code, learn how to code. All these types of things, that feedback they gave. And that was the difference. And I'll admit, even in that regard, that was tremendously helpful for me and very appreciated. But broadly, profession wise, that's really the trick, isn't it? Folks that are hungry to learn, they've got the aptitude, the drive, knowing where to point that can be really intimidating. Security is impossible to know everything. And early in my career, that was intimidating. And later, it was exciting. Like, I'll never finish learning. But early on, it was, well, imposter syndrome, and I still, have that today sometimes. But saying, how am I good? Am I ready? Where am I strong? Where do I need to learn? And I think it's just reassessing those types of things. But to the question, it was having them direct me and say, this is what you need, where you start, and a North Star.
So people, it's funny. I feel like so many of these things, and especially like, we live in the world of technology. Everybody's obsessed with it, but I feel like more often than not, when I'm talking to folks about technology, it always comes back to people. Amazingly, but like, what? Fast forward now to like, you're a security leader, and you've identified a gap in, hey, like, there seems to be some type of gap here between, like where folks are and like how do folks get to like the next level of like how do folks develop their skills? How do folks figure out how to get from point A to point B, or how to take things apart, or how to understand deeply like what they're dealing with from a technology perspective? Like, how did you, I guess, how did that become obvious to you that there was that gap?
I think first, I certainly empathize with it, and saying there's realizing that there's much I can continue to learn. And so throughout my career, whether it be at the company I went to, refer to the folks that brought me in and gave me a chance. We grew out internationally from a lot of early graduates. I think in the Philippines, for example, we had colleagues all over the world, and saying, okay, how do we help embrace these folks, and that are, again, high aptitude, hungry to learn, and give them a steady stream of support and guidance and help, and also let them run. That was through various things, documenting what we did. If we didn't understand it well enough to teach it, we could always learn through teaching. Pairing people together, and whether it's a very senior IC that says, "Well, I don't want to lead people," you don't have to, that's not the same as an HR type thing, right? You can inspire. Alice here wants to learn from you. You can share what you know. Some of that sort of, I guess, karmic obligation we have to share things. So pairing people together on projects, letting them learn from each other, help each other out. making it very flat to go after a specific initiative. So a gang of folks working together, sharing all their knowledge, talking through things, facilitating in team settings that it's okay not to know, and saying, hey, Brad, you know a lot about this particular topic. Can you help us out with this thing or explain to us? And maybe we can take some ideas from you and work on this thing. And it's okay to, even as a leader or other roles in the team, say, I'm not super strong in that topic, but I know someone that is. And so it's a culture element there too. So the first was tactical, second's cultural. And then ongoing, even in BugCrowd, for example, in the background, a crowdsourced security testing platform and leader in that space, we had a number of earlier career folks that would work with us on our triage team. Very, very bright. Earlier career, great, I guess, hackers, researchers, relate to them myself early on. And we would bring them in and support them with formal training and the same sort of culture of supporting each other, and everyone's kind of got their niche. So those types of things where people can be comfortable sharing, comfortable not knowing everything, and in an environment where they can immerse and learn really helps a lot more. There's things like certifications and so forth that are tremendously valuable, but I find it much more so on the Monday through Friday to be in a team, in an environment where those things are just normal every day, helping each other for something new.
Nice. So this it seems like the elements of this then, if we're starting to either deconstruct or architect this, that a big key to this sounds like from what you've built is that there's some type of team element to this. There's like folks constantly collaborating together on a project or trying to solve something.
Yeah, I'd say that's the secret sauce. I mean, you'll have to divide and conquer on work, different initiatives at times, right? But it's finding opportunities, whether that's a GRC analyst that wants to know more about cloud security, or a cloud security person that wants to know more of the business why, and more of the regulatory why behind a compliance effort. So even crossing some of those disciplines that aren't purely technical, but finding opportunities for those different folks to intersect and work together efficiently on things and share that knowledge is really important to me. And one of the reasons why I like remaining as hands-on as I can appropriately. So I may be speaking to other leadership executive team about security program initiatives and supporting from that level. That's my responsibility now these days. But I also like to make sure that I can sit down with developers and earn and keep that credibility about how to fix security issues. Those types of things are very important for our profession.
Nice. In like in terms of like what you've built and developed, we'll get to that in a minute. I wanna was there an example, or was there some other type of, I call it like tool or product or technology that you saw that you were like, wow, this is like brilliant. If I wish they just like did this, but for like security, or for, whether it's cloud security or whether it's like something that's take this but apply it to something very technical. Was there something you experienced or used that was like that?
Yeah, I would think if I reflect back on this, this is before we called it DevSecOps. Even DevOps was newer. Earlier in my career, I mean, 15 years ago, doing security work and orchestrating, automating those things early on before there were products built for this. So think software development lifecycle, some of the things at the tail end of that for doing source code analysis and different security type linters. I've been privileged to work with some folks to help build some of those tools. And that made our lives easier, right? That was the motivation. Can we make our lives a little easier, make us more efficient? But I learned tremendously from what was the lowest hanging fruit there, like credentials left in code and some of those types of topics, onto things that are more complex, like data flow analysis and traditional SCA tools. So those things have been really fun for me. Latch into it and like learning on that and learning from it, helping build it.
Nice. But
And now
like,
that's more of a broader industry now. There's products for that these days.
I was just gonna say, it's funny. Like, it seems like there's a lot of this stuff was just had to be manually configured or hacked or built back in the day, and now there's tools or technology to automate most of that work. What about like what was the first thing that you built where you're like, okay, I have an idea of like something that I think could really help people like connect the dots, and like what was the first thing that you said, okay, I'm gonna go build this? Like, what was that?
I think of a few examples, but more recently, at least the last 5, 6 years, it's actually been some training. So, for example, building a capture the flag framework meant to sit in the middle between the earlier exercises. And there's a big space. There's a lot of great content out there. Hack the Box, you can do bug bounty. There's some higher end training from MDSec and so forth, or even SANS, OWASP. But to have something that sits in the middle for developers and early career folks that is approachable by a project manager, by an early dev, that's also got that nice difficulty curve for security folks. That's been a passion project of mine. And so I can think of several things I've built over time, but I'm immensely proud of that because it's been a lot of fun to help folks learn things, forge great relationships, and then enhance it with their feedback, make it serve that purpose better. again, that difficulty sort of curve, the variance of different sort of puzzles or things that tease you into learning, and then validating that through some outcomes. Like the first time I ran it, we had a project manager come in third. Like at the very end of a hackathon week, I was running this at a small startup, and this person's like, "Oh, I can't, I'm not gonna do it to capture the flag. I can't do that sort of stuff." The developers were on the scoreboard. Everyone's having a great time. I said, "Well, here, take a look at some things," and showed them where to go learn some of those things that some folks supported me with, and they got the itch, and then they dove in and over the weekend on their own volition went and looked up certain topics, looked up how to do certain things. To get to the point, the following week, as we were concluding the exercise, they came back around there in third place. And the developers were
Wow.
going, "How this person?" And they had over the weekend just took off, learning all sorts of stuff. So now you've got this product leader who ended up, coming in third on the capture the flag with some fairly technical flags towards the end there. They solved themselves, and that was a lot of fun.
So what were some of the things they had to like figure out or go do over the weekend? Like what like and I guess I'm curious like how you reverse engineered the different components or pieces or steps of the capture the flag game, if you will.
Yeah, I think so. And I'll give you an idea of some of the topics in the challenges. Anything from just looking at your own cookies, looking at the source code of a web page, some JavaScript challenges, things like that. Not just full of surprise. Some of those lower hanging ones that are like, this looks kind of cool. And you start playing with that onto more OWASP top 10 type things, stored cross-site scripting, SQL injection, some different variances of, or different varied difficulties of reverse engineering. So the earlier flags, the easier ones, kind of get you hooked. You're looking at your cookies in the dev console, or maybe you downloaded the copy of Burp Community, for a free intercepting proxy, and you set that up after looking at a YouTube video. But you're getting poking at those things, and next thing you know, like this individual, what they were working on over the weekend that was so gratifying was they figured out how to do the stored cross-site scripting. They figured out how to do the SQL injection. This was all on their own, and this was very new to them, and that was a lot of fun to see. A big part of the capture flag itself, most of my work has been in logging and understanding how someone is approaching something, tracking their sort of session in a way, so that when someone says, "This looks weird, what about this?" I can understand where they are and give some very high level feedback. I think you're on the right track. You're looking at the right thing, or even high level things like that, instead of "Have you clicked on this?" And those are small differences that make, in my opinion, a big distinction in letting someone fish more themselves.
Nice. So you've built sort of like a way in which you could kind of monitor and see where people are going so you can give them clues depending on like what they're doing or what they're not doing.
Yes, you can understand some context. Where are they and how do they get to that piece of things? And from that, in many cases, infer where they may be stuck or how they're thinking about it. And that lets you be creative with your feedback. And it's just great, whether it's remote in a Discord or I hold these sessions over like a Twitch stream, for example, or most recently last week at a local security conference, walk around with a laptop and say, "Hey, that's really cool. You're almost there." And you can see the light bulb go off. And I really love that.
So it seems like you've taken this concept and it's not just for like your own teams at work. This is like something I know you've gone out in the community with. Like, what are some of the types of you mentioned a security conference. I know you're very involved with the local community in Alabama, in Birmingham, right? What
That's
are
right.
some of the I guess what are some of the groups or organizations where that have kind of adopted this or places you've been able to plug this into?
Yeah, very diverse. Gosh, I mentioned the security conference, our local DEF CON or DC 205 group, very involved there. But also things less typical, like I ran this several times, but a few years ago, one of the largest events was just let's put this on Twitter and see who shows up. And I had some some established friends that are very known in the community that were kind enough to retweet, sort of spread the word. And we had college students from Cambodia,
Wow.
Indonesia, India. We had pen testers from all over the world as well, more senior folk. We had people that knew, we had common friends in the States and elsewhere. We had a large diversity of players on here. And we were in Discord, we were on Twitter together. And later I did a Twitch stream to talk through the challenges and help folks understand how to solve the ones or maybe other ways to solve things they did a different way. And that was a lot of fun. Some folks made friends in that. There was a great competition sort of between some countries and universities that developed, which was really fun to watch. But this was all organic. It was just, hey, we have this thing. It's entirely free. We've got some prizes on our own. We bought some things ourselves to give out to people as a thank you for playing. Come have fun with us, and we'll talk about it when we're finished. And I've started doing these on about a monthly basis. I host and run these myself. There's no cost. The motive is to have the community learn and just to give back and facilitate those relationships.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, it's just amazing. I don't really I don't really come across that many things. Maybe it's because I'm not looking, but where folks are just doing stuff just because they're like passionate about it. There's no money involved. There's no, um, and you probably a lot of these people you don't know. Like you're just these are folks on the other side of the world. What like I guess are there moments or things that happen that like when you say like okay this is like really gratifying. Like what are some of the things for you that stand out as like the most gratifying?
I'm so grateful you asked that. There's several, but thinking of things that are early career, I see myself and some of these folks. I was really very privileged in January to go. It's complete coincidence. I met an educator who came to Birmingham B-Sides. The keynote speaker had a personal issue come up and they had to delay their talk. And so they had another individual there, an educator that was on another track, said, "Hey, I can take that and fill the time. We've got some folks in the auditorium." They came in sort of off the cuff and gave the most impassioned talk to everyone, saying, "Hey, you all are in the security community. We've got business leaders here. We've got other pen testers, people at different parts of their careers, from college students. We need you. I need you." And this individual leads the IT department at a local vocational school, actually sort of out in a rural area, coincidentally, where I grew up or spent a lot of time growing up. And he said, I go to the state of Alabama, I'm paraphrasing him heavily, and they asked me, we can give you money, but you've got to qualify these investments. So what these companies, this board of companies, so they need to hire, they need people to know. You line up a curriculum. They tell me that if we teach or ensure these folks graduate with this, that they can give them an internship, but that's what they're looking for, but you've got to qualify it. And he's saying to all of us, I need you to show up to these things. These youth are talented. They can't get a foot in. They deserve to. They're very bright. And as I was listening to him give this talk, I was, feel like that's a little dusty in here. I related to that growing up in a rural area and saying, well, I'd love faster internet and I'd love to have some books. And this is before Udemy and YouTube and ways to learn how to code from some person on there and that type of thing. Anyway, to the point, it really resonated with me. And he was nice enough to let me go and guest speak at his vocational school. And what really resonated with me, these young people that just had this zeal for learning this stuff. Gave them a talk about bug bounty, even the security research and things that they could totally approach, maybe make some money, for free. It's safe to do. It's okay to do it. And also the way to practice some of these concepts, like the capture flag mirror, some of those types of things you could find in bug bounty, for example. And some of them dove into it. And then the last thing I'll add to that is that, even at the conference and subsequent, he's come and brought some of his students to our DEF CON meeting. So they would commute. This is a county away. It's about an hour away, a little bit more than that, some, and come sit down with us. And they wanted to learn. And he's got success stories. These folks that work at local, like there's a local Honda manufacturing facility and the IT department or other stories there. But wanting to invest in these folks and say, you've got a college track, you've got military service, for example. These are all great options. You've got trades. But if you want to be in tech, you can still do that. And while college is a great asset, it isn't absolutely required. And there's certifications or other ways to build that experience. You can do this. And so seeing those young people just sort of go, I can. And next thing you know, they're asking questions in emails, shooting emails. Like, I'll answer them. You can ask. Because again, when we were first talking about this, I feel I kind of owe a debt of gratitude to the universe. For that.
Well, it's amazing how it seems to have come full circle. Now you're on the other side of this. It seems like a lot where you've got folks asking you questions of how to get from point A to point B. What is there anything serendipitous? Have you run into anybody or come across somebody that you had either met previously or I guess had like some time like when like worlds collide where like you knew somebody from growing up and all of a sudden now you run into them because of this?
Yes, in several ways. I have had some folks that I went to school with. It's great to reconnect with them and see where they've gone in life. Some of these young folks I've talked to, I've reconnected after a couple of years, and they've got this great job, and they're like, "Hey, this teacher helped me out," or you and I talked on Twitter about something, and now I'm doing this, or I graduated, I've got a great job, have a good time. That's really gratifying. And one person that I grew up with actually uh, ended up starting his own company, selling later to Target. Yeah, there's a local tech scene in Birmingham, but being very successful in that regard. And he and I actually refurbished computers when we were about 15 to sell them to the school. So it's just neat to see how folks in this space, I guess, technology being the democratizer of opportunity, that if you've got a knack for it, you've got a drive, you've got that passion, and you're given opportunities, you need to have a shot for sure. And we need to facilitate more of that. Then you can go really far.
No, that's amazing. What so you started this journey like your first I guess game that you built or training you built was like you said 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah, it's about
or
6 years ago now.
6 years
Yeah,
ago?
the capture the flag framework. I'd done ad hoc stuff before, but this was the first effort. I want to build something from scratch. I can't Google my challenges. I want it to be this challenge curve that's very approachable. Those are I sort of set forth my requirements. I wrote them down on a scrap piece of paper that this is what this is going to be and why it's different than things that were out there, right? And also, I'm learning myself because I'm doing some additional web development, those things that I spend a lot of time on.
Anything like, so I guess beginning to end for you, like you first sat down, say, okay, I'm going to build this capture the flag game, to like actually like, okay, here, I need some folks to test this. I think it's ready. How long was that, like, in terms of like how long it took you to build?
I'd say for the first version, just short of a month. It didn't take very long to develop everything, and I've been adding to it ever since. I'll have some odd idea about some fun flag, whether it's a puzzle or a real more technical example, and I'll go create it. And the way I've built this is quite modular, so I can add a new challenge in 10 minutes. So if there's something inspirational that I see, or maybe something in the news, it's often opportune to say, let's add a flag for that and make it fun.
Interesting. So it seems like you built the first version of this, but that first version's still alive, like it's still being used, and you've just sort of built onto it over time.
That's right. Yeah, I can keep adding new challenges, changing them, and even sort of rotate them out so that when I run this each time, if anyone that sees this would like to play, those flags change. That way, it's still fresh. There's always something fun for you. You're unlikely to see the same thing too many times, or in a row at least.
So if somebody like started with you 5, 6 years ago, they've gotten every flag. Like there's just new things that pop up for them. So it's never like they've essentially never completed the game, so to speak.
That's the idea. That's the idea. We'd love to have people
Okay.
come back and play this because, again, a lot of several of the flags have been from feedback to folks. It'd be nice if. What do you mean? And then we'll put it together.
Really cool. What, like, is there any like tools or technology or anything that you've changed or sort of embedded into the game, because they're new? Or I know you mentioned like being able to add things. Like, what is there anything like, I don't know if like AI is part of this, or if there's any other technologies I'm thinking of like that are like, recent, like they wouldn't have been around 5 years ago that are now part of the game.
Well, not released yet, but I am working on an LLM challenge. Again, this is from my own learning. I was fortunate to be involved with an AI-based company for a SOC tool or monitoring tool. And so applying some of that interest in that to learn and get deeper than just prompt engineering, but my own models. Then one of the new challenges that'll be out in about a month is going to be one where you have to jailbreak out of a model to get the flag and those types of things. So that's been fun to build that. I'm not quite finished yet, but that's almost ready. The rest of them, I think, pop culture references, some jokes, a few memes, to make it funny. You'll hear someone laugh or like, oh, I get it, but it is to teach a concept, right? Some
Yeah.
iteration or dealing with filtering or those things are important, but I'll throw some jokes in there just to get people laughing.
Oh no, humor's. I'm a big fan of humor, and I think as far as education, if like, I feel like if you could generate a lot of different emotions in the process of learning, it often tends to create some stickiness.
Yeah, you got to make it fun. Got to make it fun.
Yeah. What like
You learn by accident.
so with like when a new challenge comes out, do you ever have like a certain group of individuals or person that's like always the first to complete it?
That's new, and I've really appreciated it because having folks sort of look at things that you've put some time into, they say, well, this isn't very intuitive, or them being insightful enough to ask me, what do you want someone to get out of this? And saying, well, that might be tough for someone to understand what you meant, or to get over that first step to kind of run down things. And so more recently, I've been fortunate to have that help from our local DEF CON group. So beta testing some of these flags, even for the conference last week. And there was one particular flag I changed as a result of that feedback. They said, this is a little confusing, but I think I know what you're after. What if you did this, if it hinted it this way, or such things? I'm like, that's a great idea. Thank you. And we were able to quickly fix it, and folks were on their way. So the idea is to make it a community effort. And even I hope in the future here, not only that new AI flag, but beyond that, I've met some developers at this conference that expressed interest in helping. I said, let's go. I love your contributions here. This is meant to be sort of open source. This is meant to be shared. But I want to grow this. And again, not to compete with the other plethora of options out there. Actually, I link to a lot of these and tell people where else they can go to learn. But it is to stay focused on that, make this fun.
No, I love that. What like with I guess if I'm putting my security leader hat on, not that I've been one, but if I'm out there listening to this and I've got a team of folks that are, I don't know, maybe I've stood up a SOC and I've got a bunch of folks in there. This is their first job in security, but they're hungry and they're passionate about it and they want to learn. Like, I guess, like, what's the right profile of person that you think would like really get a lot of value out of, spending time with one of your games or one of your training aids?
Yeah, good question, Mike. I think the most value would be a student or early career, think, or maybe even a mid-level developer that is security curious. We need much more of that. That wants to understand how things get broken as much as built. Those folks would, I think, benefit from the wide gamut of challenges, albeit a good 30% of the challenges are intended to be sort of the tiebreaker or the thing that, as you watch some of the players, might speed through things at first, some of the earlier concepts pretty quickly, right? Then they get to one, and I go, you have fun with that one. You let me know if you have a question. They get to something a little more difficult. That's fun to see. So I try to be wide gamut. You mentioned SOC folks, though. That's a really often an early career opportunity for some security people. It's great. I think this game adds some more context to what real issues that may be exploited by someone that with bad intentions. So how are those things done? How can we defend against it? How does it look in logs? That's helpful too.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were saying this, like junior, like really junior folks, like a red team somewhere, who maybe like again early on the red team, or maybe they're at a pen testing, they're in a pen testing role, or I don't know. I'm just thinking of like folks along like those particular jobs, or any that else like on the security side that stand out. Because it sounds like obviously there's like some very technical elements of this. So like obviously if you're a developer like who's security curious, like I feel like that's obviously fit. But on the other side where you maybe aren't as technical, but like are in some element of security, have I kind of named off some of the ones you think would be a really good fit for who are like almost like technical curious or like really curious to figure out
Yeah,
how to
no,
like
I'd say
deconstruct
that's
it?
a good way to look at it. I mean, these are meant to be approachable enough to sort of Google or understand what might be there. Maybe the best way to say this is oftentimes these challenges will tell you what you're going to test. This is a cross-site scripting one. Figure out how to make it work. And those are great, right? You're practicing a certain concept. Maybe there's some filtering that would prevent it, but you can circumvent it. Love that stuff. None of the flags here are labeled. You have this website that's got all this just funny stuff going on. Some things might apply. You've got to post a message to an admin, or you're searching for users, what those might be, what issues may be in that type of functionality. But the majority of it is not, doesn't tell you what's wrong. You find it yourself, which is a good balance of trying to make that approachable, right? So from those different roles, I mentioned earlier, having a product leader dive in and play some of those things, that's exactly what I'm after. Have more folks be curious about this, be able to approach it and say, I can do these, I can do this.
Nice. But like, I guess for folks who are listening, if you're still listening to this, it means you're probably curious enough. I guess what I'll do is I'll make sure we drop the information on the post too when we post this and publish it. But like curious, like how else folks should get a hold of you if they're like interested in either collaborating on this, or just want to be able to like connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, or even get access to what you're doing. Like what's the best way to do that?
I would love that, first of all. Thank you. So in the challenge site itself, there's a link to our Discord. We welcome everyone. It's a very approachable, great group of people. So you can join our Discord. I'm in there. My nickname's Colonel Panic, but you'll see a link to that in the site. It's on the About page. So that's one way of getting a hold of me. I also have my email there available as well. But yeah, would welcome questions about the challenges, feedback, what's confusing, what's missing. Ask how to do something. I'll help. May have to get back to it, but I will answer those questions. And most importantly, folks in that Discord will as well. So that's an important thing for us to support other people and meet new folks that are in this, irrespective of their career level.
Perfect. I'll make sure we'll add that stuff in the post
Thank you,
when
Mike.
we publish this. And then uh, I know you mentioned earlier like adding in a challenge around LLMs. I guess my last question for you would be around like what's next. Like what's like if we fast forward sort of a year or two out, what are some of the things you're thinking of now that you really want to build into this?
Yeah, I think what's missing takes a little more pointed effort, but things like mobile applications with a backing API, you download some type of mobile app. I also am building a sort of fork of this that is meant for youth. Think middle school, junior high, and above, where it's a report card system, right? So almost
Very
like your
cool.
school's report card system, and you get to hack your grades or something cool like that. To get that hook, right, and make it fun, or OSN to your teacher, whatever. Nothing malicious, but to teach some concepts, privacy, again, get that sort of, this is cool, the cool factor, right? And so I'm in the midst of early design and build of that to bring this back to that program that I referred to earlier at the vocational school.
Really cool. I was just going to ask if like somewhere in Alabama is going to get to be the beneficiary of this.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm working hard on it for that reason. It's gonna be great.
So fun to talk through this, Ryan, and I appreciate you taking time to be on the show. This was so great having you, and I can't wait to publish this and see some of the feedback about it as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right.